Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Euro 2020 fantasy football. My name is Dan and today I'm going to be sharing with you the most ambitious video I think I have ever made. This is going to be predicting every single lineup of every team, every first 11 of every team in the whole of the Euros. So this is so ambitious, in fact, that I'm actually going to split this over two videos. So if you like part one, which is going to cover Group A's, B and C, then please like the video, please subscribe, ready for part two of this video, which is going to contain groups D, E and F. There we go, guys. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully I get this mostly right. Even if you're not playing fantasy, UEFA fantasy, then that's absolutely fine. Hopefully you can enjoy this video. I do think I'm going to get about 90% of this right, but obviously things will chop and change depending on the game, depending on what's needed from the game, whether the team's got nothing to play for anymore later on in the group stage perhaps. So yeah, things aren't going to be 100% accurate, but I'm going to try and give you my best opinion based on a lot of research that I've been doing to try and nail every team to the best of my ability. So here we go, guys. We're starting off with Group A. Let's get it done. So we'll start off with Turkey. Their first game is against Italy, but they have got those nice fixtures against Wales and Switzerland after that as well. So the real standout players, I guess, in this lineup is that they've got a couple of 4.5 million defenders, which is very nice indeed. We probably wouldn't want to go for Soyuncu just because he's 5 million. Yokuslu, we're probably not going to go for just because he's that defensive midfielder. But if you go further up the pitch, you can see Yilmaz is going to be the individual lone striker, I believe. And behind him, Yazici and Tufan. So Yazici and Tufan are going to be those central midfielders. Yazici, you can see, is 5.5 million, so that's actually a really good price for what is essentially an attacking midfielder. I do think Under is going to play on that right-hand side, and I do think that Çalhanoğlu, sorry, is going to play on that left-hand side. So I'm just going to butcher pronunciations all video, by the way. I hope you're okay with that. But yeah, this is how I think they're really going to line up. It's relatively attacking. There's some nice attacking players in there. There's some very expensive players in there, but there's also some real nice bargains as well. So Yazici may be one to go for there. That's probably my top pick from this team. On to Italy, and perhaps this is a little bit more interesting for you. I know a few of you guys are looking for some Italian defenders just because Italy's defence is just crazy good. They've got 7 clean sheets in a row in all international games, which is just absolutely mad, and you'll probably be hoping for a few more in the group stage. So this is how I think they're going to line up. And when we're looking at their defenders and their goalkeepers, because we want to get a couple of clean sheets, right, we've got to look at those cheaper players. So the cheaper players are going to be Bonucci, who is 5.5 million, and we've got Spinazzola for 5.5 million as well. We've also got Donnarumma in goal for 5.5 million, and then Florenzi and Chiellini, they're going to be slightly more expensive at 6 million. So we do want to look at the more cheap ones. And Spinazzola is definitely the one I would be going for here, just because he's 5.5 million, so that's the cheapest you can get for a starting Italian defender. But also, he has such great attacking threat. He is constantly bombing up the left-hand side. Not necessarily scoring goals, but he has scored a few goals in his career, plenty of goals in his career, in fact. Always looking to get an assist. He's got loads of assists for Italy and at club level as well. And he'll be really pushing up, really high up the pitch. And Insigne will perhaps tuck in a little bit on the inside, allowing Spinazzola to get on the outside of him. So that's going to be a really nice pick. In midfield, a few people might disagree with me here. People might say, okay, we think Jorginho is going to play in the central defensive midfield position. Maybe. I'm not 100% convinced either way. I slightly think more that Locatelli will play there just because he has been playing a little bit more often there for Italy. So for that reason, I do think Locatelli is going to be the man to hold down that position. We'll see. Another interesting thing is that although Insigne, he's going to be absolutely nailed on, so we'll definitely want him. We're probably not interested in either of the other two midfielders, but Insigne, we're going to want him. He's going to be a really nice attacking position despite the fact that he's listed as a midfielder. Immobile, 10 million forward, he's probably going to get rotated a little bit, if I'm completely honest, with Belotti. So maybe Immobile plays 2 of the group games and then Belotti plays the other one perhaps. Not exactly sure. And then on the other side, Chiesa, I'm not 100% sure on Chiesa and his position. I know a lot of people actually fancy Chiesa for their fantasy teams, but also it could be Bernardeschi there, it could be Berardi there. We're not exactly sure. So that is a really risky position, and hopefully we can find out some early team news and make those final decisions that way. But that's a really risky one to go for that wing. So Insigne is probably the safer wing and the safest attacking player to go for out of this Italian team. Next, we have Wales, and in Wales, everyone in their whole defence is 4.5 million. So we've got across the board 4.5 million defenders that are going to be starting. And the most interesting ones to me are definitely the two fullbacks of Roberts and Williams. I know people will say, okay, Williams got sent off last game. Maybe he falls out of favour. I don't think so. When you go to a major tournament, you play your best players, even if they have made a mistake. You know, it's not like a disciplinary mistake or anything like that. So it's fine. He will play, so don't worry about that. But yeah, definitely Nico Williams and Roberts on the other side. They're definitely going to be the defenders you want to go for if you wanted to go for a Welsh defender. Not sure anyone would want to do that, but it's definitely something that you should look at. In midfield, we've got Ampadu, not interesting at all, very defensive midfielder. On the other side, Ramsey. If Ramsey is fit, I mean, most of this video assumes that a lot of the players are going to be fit because it's so difficult to predict injuries and stuff like that and try and know how long people are going to be out for. So I can't really do that. So in an ideal scenario, Ramsey would be playing there, but I can also imagine that Joe Allen would come in there should a Ramsey not be available. So on the wings there, we've got Wilson and James. I think you'll prefer to go for James just because he's a cheaper option there, to be honest. And we've got Bale up front. And despite the fact that Bale is listed in the fantasy game as a midfielder, he's actually going to be playing as a striker. So he's an out-of-position player. He's going to be picking up clean sheet points, an extra point for a goal, despite the fact that he is playing as a striker. So that's really nice there. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on if you fancy Wales, particularly against Switzerland and Turkey. That might be potentially an opportunity for Bale to do something there. And we'll complete Group A with Switzerland. Now, Switzerland are kind of interesting, I think, mostly because the way that their attack is structured. But we'll work from the defence first. So, in terms of cheap defenders, if you want a cheap defender from Switzerland and you might want to do that, then Elvedi is the one to go for, I believe. Rodriguez is interesting. A few people are saying, okay, he missed a penalty the other day, so Rodriguez is not going to be on penalties anymore. But Ricardo Rodriguez, you know, he scored a penalty, you know, some games before that. So I don't think one missed penalty means that a player never takes a penalty again. Rodriguez has been the penalty taker for Switzerland for a long while now, and I don't think that's going to change based on one missed penalty. Don't worry about that, guys. So he's definitely a very good, interesting option. It's quite an expensive option, you know, 5.5 million for a Switzerland defender, but if you can think that Switzerland can keep a clean sheet and they might get a penalty as well, then that could be very nice. And Babu would probably be the other player that I'd be interested in, but he's 5 million. I don't know. You can think about that yourself, guys. It's in the midfield. Not really interested in anyone. Freuler, Xhaka, Zuba, not really interested in any of those because they're too defensive or it's in two defensive positions. Then we go up front, and this is where things are interesting because Seferovic and Embolo, forwards and quite expensive, 8 million, 8.5 million. Shaqiri, who plays just behind them, who has just as good output in terms of assists and goals. Shaqiri is going to get just as many assists and goals as Seferovic and Embolo. So, considering he's cheaper, he's a midfielder, so he gets extra points for goals, extra points for clean sheets. He is definitely the attacker to go for Switzerland, and I wouldn't even bother going for any of the other attackers, to be honest. So Shaqiri is the main guy, I would say, for Switzerland that you might want to go for against Wales. Group B, and we have Denmark, another real strong defensive team. And, you know, they have kept so many clean sheets over the last couple of years. Something like 10 clean sheets in the last 10 years. Something crazy like that. I think they've only conceded, only 3 teams have scored against them in the last, since 2019, I think it is, which is just a crazy, crazy stat. So you're definitely going to want to go in on the defence. Now, where do you go in the defence? That's kind of up to you. A lot of people will just go straight to Schmeichel because it seems like a safe pick. But for the same price as Schmeichel, you can get Vass, who's playing at right back here for 5 million. Now, I would say that that's actually a really good pick because he's pretty nailed on, but he's also a real attacking player as well, and will provide that width to the Danish side, which I'll kind of explain how it works in a little bit more detail very shortly. But you also got Kjær there for 4.5 million, which is a nailed on centre back for 4.5 million in a fantastic defensive team. That's obviously a really good pick. And if you fancy a little bit of a risk, we've got Merla on the left hand side, who is not 100% nailed on, but he's pretty nailed on. He's like, I think he's probably going to like 80% chance of starting on any given game. So it's not 100%, but it's really, really good. And 4.5 million to get a really attacking defender there. So that's the kind of players I would go for. Rather than, I would probably ignore Schmeichel. I'd definitely ignore Christensen. And the other defensive players I would definitely be considering. You can see in their midfield, they've got 2 defensive midfielders in Delaney and Højbjerg. We're not really interested in those for our fantasy teams. But then going up front, they've kind of got Eriksson in the middle, who's going to provide all of the set pieces and most of the creativity, if not all of the creativity. We've got Poulsen, Braithwaite and Dolberg, who are all forwards, all listed as forwards. Poulsen and Braithwaite are kind of support strikers, but in the Danish system, in the Denmark system, they kind of play on the wings a little bit, which is kind of interesting. So we've got this real physical team. I think that Poulsen and Braithwaite would try and come a little bit more central as well, that's slightly more natural. We've got Vass and Mela coming from the left and right back positions, pushing up a little bit. And yeah, mostly a defensive team. Now, Dolberg is a bit of a question mark because some people think that Jonas Wind is going to be playing up front. Now, that could happen. I'm not really 100% sure what's going to happen either way. I'd say it's pretty much a coin toss out of which two is going to be the starting forward for Denmark. So I don't want to make any promises that Dolberg is going to be starting. I don't want to make any promises that Wind is going to start. I don't know. It's kind of a coin toss. But Dolberg has been playing more games for Denmark recently. So for that reason, I've put him in on this screenshot just for the sake of a prediction, right? Because I got to commit either way. So there you go. There's Denmark. Next, we have Finland, and I'm guessing you guys are probably not too interested in players from Finland, which I can completely understand. I really do understand that, but I do want to kind of pick out some interesting bits and bobs from this Finland team. So Hradeski, is going to be in goal, probably. Now, Jorinen is the other goalkeeper who's 4.5 million, who's actually been playing more often recently, mostly because Hradeski has been injured, but Jorinen has seemed to keep his place so far, but the thing is that Hradeski is just such a higher profile goalkeeper. He's arguably Finland's most high profile player. You know, he plays in the Bundesliga for Bayern Leverkusen, and no other player in this whole team is playing at that high level. Even Timo Pukki, you know, he's been playing at championship level in England for the last year. So Hradeski is kind of be their most high profile player. So for that reason, I think he's going to play. He has to kind of play, surely. But he's only 4 million, which is absolutely insane. And the other three centre-backs there are all, again, 4 million. So you've got some kind of, I don't want to say guaranteed starters, but players that are super likely to start pretty much every game for Finland for only 4 million. So if you really want to save some money on just a bench option, who you just want to have a player who plays just in case, just a player you can have as an emergency player on the bench who is definitely going to play but maybe not get much more than that, then these are definitely the guys to go for. Moving up the pitch, not really anyone I'm too interested in. You know, there's Lod. He's a midfielder who'd be playing as some kind of a second striker type role. But Pukki is definitely interesting. And after the Denmark match, because Denmark is a tricky one, definitely in that match day 2 against Russia, Pukki is definitely got to be a name on our lips. I really do think that. So definitely keep an eye on him. But generally speaking, Finland is going to be one of the more weak sides in this competition. So, Belgium are still playing the same formation that they've played for seemingly forever. It's the same system, yeah, same setup, everything like that. In fact, the only real difference is that we've now got Denier as the centre-back in the middle, which is really nice because he's only 4.5 million. So that's actually really nice. Because we look at these other defenders, you know, 5.5 million for Alderweireld, Vertonghen or Meunier. Courtois is 6 million, which is just so much for a Belgium team that do actually occasionally concede a couple of goals as well. They're not like defensive masters or anything like that. They'll do okay, but they're not defensive masters. So you don't really want to be spending quite that much money, I don't think. But Denier for 4.5 million is actually quite a nice little bargain there. Meunier, if you really want to go or spend a little bit more money and go for a slightly more attacking player. Thorgan Hazard on the left, he's just not going to offer quite as much just because he's playing in a slightly deeper position compared to some of the more forward wingers / attacking midfielders that are going to be supporting Lukaku. A few of you might be tempted by Hazard, but he's just not been playing. He's just not been Hazard, has he, for the last 2 years, really. Tielemans and Witsel, again, not too interested. Maybe Tielemans, but I don't know. De Bruyne, if he's good to go, then he's always a good shout, right? And then Lukaku is kind of probably the most interesting player in this whole Belgium team, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have already picked up on. I know a lot of you guys have Lukaku in your team already. So Lukaku and Denier here are my two favourite players in this Belgium side that is pretty familiar to what it kind of usually looks like, to be honest. Let's finish off Group B with Russia, and there's going to be some familiar names in here and also some very unfamiliar names, right? So Zirkov at left back, or left wing back, I just want to highlight him. He's 37 years old. He's been playing football. I remember him playing for Chelsea when I was a kid. So, and that was so long ago. How long has he been around? It's crazy. He's 37 years old and still bombing down the wing, apparently. So kudos to him. Not really interested in him in terms of a fantasy asset, though. But yeah, I don't usually like to write off an entire team in fantasy because there's always some little gems here and there. But the problem is with this Russian team is that all of the players are so expensive. If they were priced a little bit better, I think I'd be much more interested. But Zyuba for 8.5 million, it's so much. Golovin for 7.5, it's a lot of money. Even the central midfielders, Zobnin and Ozdoev, 6 million each. It's so much money. Like, you know, Mario Fernandez on the right, 5.5. It's the Russian team here is kind of priced as if it was one of the better teams in the competition if you look at the player prices. But actually, Russia are probably going to be one of the weaker teams in the competition if I'm completely honest. So, yeah, I'm not too interested in this team as a whole, but that is how I expect them to line up, just for your own benefit. Finally, Group C, starting off with the Netherlands again, another team you're probably a little bit more interested in. And we'll start off in goal, because I do think this is quite interesting, because typically you'd say that Silerson is going to be the main goalkeeper, but Krul seems to have kept his place, which is really nice if you can get him for 4.5 million. That's really quite nice. Now, the other defenders are pretty expensive. De Vrij, De Ligt, not really too interested in at 5.5. Dumfries kind of justifies his 5.5 price tag a little bit more, but not really enough for me. And Wijndal on the left is just a gem. We kind of all know about Wijndal. Everyone who's clued up on their fantasy knows about Wijndal. And if you didn't know about Wijndal before and you do now thanks to this video, then you are now officially clued up on Euro fantasy, guys. So congrats on that. In midfield, Klaassen, Frankie de Jong, not too interested to be honest, just because the kind of positions they'll be playing. Wijnaldum is hopefully going to be playing in this position, and that's going to be pretty good. And then we've got Berghuis, I think that's how you say it, apologies if it's not, who I do think is very interesting. We've got Luc de Jong, who's been playing a lot, but I don't really know why he's been playing so much, because, you know, certainly at club level, he's kind of been disappointing for a little while now. But yeah, I do think he's going to be playing there. If not, it might be Wout Weghorst, who's been playing a little bit better, I guess, at club level. But de Jong does seem to be preferred in the forward position. And then Depay, kind of the talisman of this team, everything goes through him. You know, all corners, set pieces, penalties, whatever, scoring goals from wherever on the pitch. You know, he's absolute class act, and he's the star of the show for Netherlands. So he's going to be the one there. Now, interestingly, on the Netherlands, they have been experimenting with some different formations recently. So it may be that they don't go with this. Now, they went with a different formation against Scotland. They drew 2-2. So they were probably a little bit disappointed with that. Maybe they go back to the 4-3-3. But yeah, it could be that they play 5 at the back. And then a 2-man midfield, and then 2 strikers. And the strikers would be Depay, and then one of de Jong or Wout Weghorst. Of course, that would mean that you know, Klaassen, de Jong, Wijnaldum, whoever else plays in midfield Wijnaldum will play a little bit deeper, which would make Wijnaldum a little less interesting. So if they do stick with the system, that does make Wijnaldum less interesting, but arguably makes Depay more interesting. But definitely Depay in this team, Berghuis in this team, Wijndal in this team, and Krul as well in this team, Tim Krul in this team. So there's quite a lot of nice options here, and they've got the first games against Ukraine. So yeah, I would definitely take a look at this team right here in front of you, and have a look and see who you fancy, and see if you can get 1 or 2, maybe even 3 of these players in, if you're feeling extra spicy. Now for Ukraine, and you guys are probably not going to recognise any of these names. I didn't really recognise many of these names, to be honest. Yarmolenko, obviously, we know. Yaremchuk, I did know of. Malinovsky is a well-known player. Of course, we've got Zinchenko, who's probably the most famous name in that team, but I guess unless you are excellent on your European football, which I tell you what, I was probably average on my European football 2 weeks ago. Now I feel like I'm pretty good, right? Because I've just been doing research non-stop for the sake of these videos, right? But yeah, this is how they're going to line up. I do think there's nothing really interesting in defence there. You know, Ukraine probably not going to keep many clean sheets, if any, anyway, during this competition. We've got Zinchenko, who I guess people would be interested in Zinchenko, but remember, he's not realistically going to get clean sheets because Ukraine aren't going to get clean sheets. So whilst you might say, oh, I know who Zinchenko is, I like him, he's playing in midfield, that's really appealing as a defender who's playing in midfield. Is there going to be any clean sheets anyway? I guess you get the extra points for a goal, but yeah, I'm not sure. There are many players ahead of him. There's going to be Yarmolenko, Yaremchuk, and Malinovsky. They're going to be the most attacking players on the pitch, and that's if Ukraine get many goals anyway. So there is some relatively interesting players in here, but no one who I would be desperate to have. But if you fancy a punt on, you know, a Zinchenko, Malinovsky, Yaremchuk, then absolutely go for it. But they would be punts. Now for Austria, and they've got I'm kind of a little bit interesting in some ways and pretty boring in other ways. So first of all, defensively, is not really looking that interesting for Austria, and I don't think they're a particularly good defensive team anyway. So I would pretty much ignore their defence, but that's how they would line up with their defence. In midfield, I've got two defensive midfielders, Lima and Grilic. Again, not really going to be scoring too many fantasy points, so we'll probably ignore them as well. Lazaro, when he's back, could be pretty nice. Savica is kind of maybe a little bit too expensive, but he could be an interesting player, and particularly in those easier fixtures, you know, North Macedonia, the first game. So there might be a few goals for these players. But what I really like about this team, and one of them won't surprise you, which I'll just get out of the way, is Kalajdzic, who I just really rate. I just think having watched so many clips of him now and kind of looking through his stats and stuff, he's like an in-form striker. I've spoken about him to death, but he's going to be doing really well against a Macedonian defence that is just inexperienced at the highest level. I'll talk about them when we move on to North Macedonia in just 1 second, but I do think Kalajdzic can definitely get something against the North Macedonian defence. But of course, on the left wing, we have David Alaba. And when we think of David Alaba, what do we think of? We think of a central defender, you know, we think of a left back, we think of a central defensive midfielder. We don't usually think of him as a left winger, but that's where he plays for Austria, which is really quite interesting. And, you know, you can tell that whoever came up with the prices for this game assumed Alaba would be a defensive midfielder when they priced him at 5.5 million. So the fact that you can get an Austrian left winger, and, you know, one of the best players in world football, Alaba, you'd say is one of the best players in world football, right? For 5.5 million against a pretty nice group in Macedonia and Ukraine in there. It's a pretty tasty group, and Netherlands can concede a goal as well. So, you know, Alaba could be an absolutely amazing shout to go for in your team, to be honest. So, yeah, really like the look of him, actually, like a lot, especially with him playing on that left side of midfield. Madness that he's playing there. And we'll finish you off with North Macedonia. And you're not going to recognise many of these players because I didn't either, I'm guessing, unless you are an expert again, which I would never claim to be. But I'm slowly becoming a European expert thanks to crazy research, guys. I do it for you, though. I do it because I love you. And, you know, I'll tell you what, making this video in particular that you're watching right now and doing the research for it has been insanely helpful for me on deciding who to pick on my team. So you know, I'm doing it for myself as well, doing all this research and stuff. So it's really, really good. But okay, we have got a couple of interesting picks in this team. Now, defensively, are we really going to be that interested in the defense of North Macedonia? Perhaps not. But they do have, you know, potential for the odd clean sheet. I don't know, Austria, Ukraine, potentially. I don't know. But Alioski takes penalties, so some people will be interested in Alioski because he'll be taking penalties. But if you cast your eyes on the right-hand side of defence or the left-hand side of your screen, and you will see Ristovski, who is the equivalent of Alioski on the other side, but he's only 4 million. So to get a starting right wing-back for 4 million, arguably a right midfielder for 4 million, is just an absolutely amazing price. So he is definitely one of the best budget options in the entire game. So definitely have a look at him. Other than that, Bardi, obviously a set-piece god and the best player in the team. We've got Pandev, who's probably a familiar face as well. Pandev potentially taking... I just feel like Pandev, the player he is and the legend status he has, maybe he takes penalties ahead of Alioski, but I guess we'll see when it comes to it, won't we? But yeah, what I was going to say about the three centre-backs here is that none of them play at a very high level of football, which might actually make Macedonia quite a good team to target with your strikers. They kind of play, you know, in the Hungarian league or the Cypriot league, not at sort of, you know, mid-table teams, lower mid-table teams in those leagues. So they're not got the same experience, you know, Champions League experience, Europa League experience, very much of that anyway. So yeah, they could be quite interesting to target. You know, no disrespect to North Macedonia, no respect to playing in those leagues. I would love to play in one of those leagues. You know, that would be absolutely heroic if I could do that, but never going to happen. Not good enough. But these guys are. So no disrespect to them, but they could be kind of, you know, in fantasy we kind of talk about whipping boys a little bit and who we want to target, and I think Macedonia could be that. So, there we have it, 12 teams. You can see why I'm splitting this into 2 videos, by the way, because there's just so much to analyse here. There's so much to digest that it really does require 2 videos. Otherwise, we can have an hour-long video. Too much FPL, mate, for one day. But yeah, like I said, guys, this video, just making it has been so beneficial to me. So hopefully you can gain something from it as well and gain some insight. I know these lineups are not going to be 100% right. There's going to be injuries, there's going to be tactical changes, there's going to be people disagreeing. You know, like you ask, you know, your next door neighbor what they think the England squad's going to be in the first 11. You ask the other next door neighbor and they'll say a completely different thing. So no one's going to 100% agree on every team, but according to my research, this is what is most likely to happen, and perhaps some people will disagree. I may have got a few things wrong. I think I'll probably get about 90% right, as I said at the beginning of the video. I'm pretty confident about that one as well. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do leave a big thumbs up, because this has been a real big one, not just to research, but to make all of these the imagery in this video has taken a long time as well. So if you did like the video, like it, please like it. Subscribe as well if you're looking forward to part 2, because that will be coming as soon as I can get it out, and which hopefully within the next sort of 24 hours I can get this part 2 out as well. So that'll be pretty good. But aside from that, guys, join the mini league in the description. Follow me on Twitter in the description. Follow me on Instagram in the description. Anything you want really to do with FPL, mate, is all in the description. So go check that out. And yeah, I think that's just about it. I'll see you guys on part 2, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye bye.